Hey guys, there we go.
Anna, how are you? There we go.
Hey,
Good morning.
good. Hey, Jason, good to
Good.
see you.
By way of introduction, for those who might not know you, Anna, tell us who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Anna Krueger. I teach a class called Mega Lead Conversion, and I also teach a class about hiring inside sales agents. And really, who I am more as a person is I used to be a high school teacher, always said I would never do business or sales. And then here I am doing business and sales, which I actually love because what I've come to understand is it's when you listen to people's stories and then just educate them about the market, educate them about their concerns, you really get to help people. And I still feel like I get to be a bit of a teacher because I feel like real estate is a lot of just education. So yeah, that's a little bit of who I am professionally anyway.
Very cool. Now, this is not, we're going to take, and I'm Philip Alderfer, by the way, powered by Cloud. Jason, introduce yourself if you would.
I'm Jason. I'm a realtor. I work with Philip. I'm also all sorts of different things.
Yeah. It's hard to sum yourself up in like 2 seconds. Yeah.
It is.
I do too much.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I'm curious. We're gonna take this conversation and take a hard right hand turn immediately. Why did you say you never wanted to go into sales or business? Where did that come from? Yeah.
I think I just saw things like teaching as service and business and sales as greed, to be honest with you, which now I understand was a very wrong perspective. I grew up in a family of people that were all service, like police, fire department, educators.
Okay.
So nobody in my family did anything business. And so I just had a wrong perspective. And then when I left teaching, I went to a temp agency and they put me as a college recruiter, which I naively did not realize was hardcore inside sales. And that's how I got into sales. So as soon as I was into it, I realized you are very much helping people, especially with things like college degrees, or in this case, real estate, because you're offering them something that can really change their life or change their wealth. And now I love it. And I look back now at my 20-year-old self and just kind of laugh like, yeah, I was pretty naive back then. So
yeah. Interesting. I had a role in time where I was productivity coach in our market center, and I used to say, look, you guys are leaders, you're not salespeople. In other words, you're literally going to lead people down a path. You're going to walk with people down a path that's going to result in them buying a house, but you're not going to make them buy anything. You're not going to sell them, as in you're not going to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. So you're there to serve. Yeah.
I look at it like we're coaches. I mean, as an actual coach by profession, my job is to listen to the stories of the people I coach and then help them achieve their goal. And that really is what being a real estate salesperson is. And I find a lot of people in my world, if they drop the mindset of salesperson and then adopt the mindset of coach, they naturally start having more sales, because now it's client focused. It's all about them. It's about their goals, or motivating them towards their goals, which in turn, they then move forward. And yeah, we need some sales techniques, which we'll talk about today. But it really is coaching. I really feel like every buyer and listing agent is really just a coach, truly.
Yeah, I love that.
It also helps get you out of that mindset of just being transactional, right? Yeah. Like transactional is great for this year's money, right? Yeah. Like if I can go out and crank a bunch of transactions, cool. That was great for this year. And like I've had those clients where they got treated that way, and then I'm like, why'd they sell their house with someone else? You know, 4 years later, it's like, oh, because there was no relationship. It was just a transaction. And so it's like, well, if we want to be in business in 5 more years, which I'd imagine most people want to be in business in 5 more years, well, maybe we need to stop being transactional and be relational.
Yeah, people know it. They can feel it. All right, so we are here today to help to understand at a higher level lead conversion, not lead generation, but lead conversion. And of all the people in my world, that is at the top of the list in terms of helping us understand the challenges around lead conversion. And I wanted to begin a little bit with a question. We kind of talked about it before this call today. It feels like, from my coaching perspective, it feels like I am hearing people say lead conversion is harder now. And I'm curious, is that a perception or is that a reality from your perspective? Yeah.
I would say it's both. It's primarily reality. And if you're walking around telling yourself it's harder, that will make it harder it is.
Yeah.
So yes. So I know from coaching people, I've surveyed them, I've asked questions on coaching calls, I find out. So about a year and a half ago, it was roughly 15 to 20 contacts to set an appointment. And now I'm hearing a range of 30 to 48, which is a big range, but understand that's going to depend on your skill level, and it's going to depend on what lead sources you're calling, right? So I would say high end is 48. And I just coached a team Wednesday. Honestly, they were feeling really discouraged about all this. And hopefully the audience is hearing this too. The encouragement is we do have a number, and it's 48 is the high end it takes to set an appointment. So if you're sitting there feeling like there's no one to be had, if you want to set one appointment a day, commit to talk to 48 people a day. And that's going to be a lot of hard work and intentionality and intensity. And the numbers show you'll set one if you talk to 48 people max, or it goes down from there. So it is definitely more work than it was before. But I also wouldn't want to walk around saying it's harder, because it's going to make my mindset tank.
Yeah.
Will affect it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary says, I think we've probably been on the same calls when Gary said, look, the only thing that shifts in a shift is the numbers.
Yeah.
It's just a question of slightly different conversion ratios than we have, but there is still real estate to be done. We just have to dig the well a little deeper. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. What do you see as so when we were thinking about setting up this call, Jason and I were talking about sort of lead conversion with new, fresh, hot leads. The challenge around lead conversion with people that you already have in the database, or lead conversion with, say, those folks that have cool leads, or people that came to the website, came to an open house. You may not have done a great job following up. Jason and I were talking about this earlier today, like those cool leads in your world that we need to reinvigorate. If you were to start us off with one of those three, hot, fresh, new, database, or cool, cold leads, where would you encourage us to begin with if we wanted to improve conversion?
I would say, obviously, there's opportunity with hot leads. I think, though, where people in this market are missing is their cooled off leads. Okay. Because this is just what I'm noticing. It's almost like this anxiety of, I need new leads, I need new leads, I need new leads. And then we look at the system and it's like, you have 2,000 leads, and, over 50% of them haven't been contacted in the last 3 months. There's business in there, but I think when the market has shifted, it's easy to put our focus on new, and we can start to neglect the old. And so I think that's probably the biggest opportunity for today, how to convert old leads, not be weird about it when you call them out of the blue. Yeah.
So where do we begin? How do we jumpstart that conversation?
Yeah. So I do want to get into the nitty gritty of how do you talk to them. The first thing, though, I think is important to talk about is mindset. And I want to use an analogy. And Philip, I know we've talked about this before last time we spoke, but the analogy I would like to use is a coach analogy, a sports coach analogy. And if you think about it, you have high school football refs, and then you have NFL football refs. And essentially they do the same job, but the NFL ref is getting paid significantly more than the high school ref, right? And the high school ref, they will make a judgment call, and it's not highly analyzed, maybe by the parents, but it's not like they're taping it, replaying it, looking at it from all these angles, and then making a call. Right? They usually make a pretty quick call and then the game moves on. A college ref or an NFL ref, they actually it's recorded from multiple angles. They'll stop the game. Multiple people will look at the tape and decide what's the call here. There's so much more discretion that goes into an NFL game. Can we all see this so far? Hopefully this is making sense. And I think it's a lot like that with older leads. And I'll tie this together here in a minute. But what I hear is people will call older leads that are in their database, and the lead will quickly say, oh, I'm not interested anymore. Oh, we're putting that on hold. And the knee-jerk response is, okay, great, I'll follow up with you. And to me, that's like a high school ref move, and you're not going to get paid as much. But an NFL ref move as an agent would be, I appreciate you being honest with me. I am curious, though, when you first started investigating buying or selling a home, what even had you interested in that at the time? And almost like brushing it off, like, yeah, I totally get it. You're not looking to do something right now. But when you were looking to do something, what made you want to do it? And what we have to understand is if a lot of people don't have to move. There are people that have to move for work, job transfer, military. a family member died or they're, whatever it could be. But there's a large percentage of people that absolutely could move today, but they're just procrastinating. They're dragging their feet. They don't have to. It's a want to. And that's really where we have a big opportunity with these people to start engaging them in motivation, talking to them about their motivation. And they could go from, I'm not really all that interested. They could become a lead for you if you know how to ask the right questions. And now you're playing like an NFL ref. You're going to analyze it from multiple directions, make a better call, truly a better call.
Truly better call.
Yeah. Just a quick, they said they're not interested. Next. Does that make sense the way I'm explaining it?
Yeah. And I think too, I think a lot of people right now, we're actually hearing there's fewer motivated people, so go trash the others and only chase the motivated. And I like that you're actually saying the opposite. You're saying that they're motivated, but their motivation might be lower. Like they're not in that death, divorce, whatever the different categories are, but they could be motivated if we can help coach them into that. And so don't ignore them, don't avoid them. It's just a different type of person. And they have to get treated differently.
Right. Well, think about for all of us here, actually right before this call, I went to the local Y and joined the local Y. I've been at Planet Fitness forever and I want a pool and I want more group classes. I've wanted to do that for probably about 3 months, but there was nothing pressing on me. No one was coaching me about it. Nobody was pressing on me about it. So I just kept dragging my feet. And finally today I was like, okay, I have a 2-hour break. I'm going to go do it. But the truth is, if someone 3 months ago said, hey, Anna, what's the benefit of joining the Y now? Why is that better to you than the other gym and blah, blah, blah? I probably would have done it 3 months ago. So the motivation was inside of me, but there wasn't an urgency. There was no one requiring me to do it. And that's exactly the type of lead we're talking about. And that is a large pool of people. They want to, they really, really do want to, but moving is overwhelming. They're nervous about the market. And so they're going to say things like, we're just putting that on hold. Where if a coach came along and asked them some good questions, we're not motivating them. We're just asking them questions to bring their own motivation to the top and get them into action.
Yeah, if they had no interest in real estate, they would not have come to the website. They would not have gone to the open house. They would not have picked up the flyer from the local YMCA.
Exactly.
But they did something. They did something to put themselves out there. So do we believe that we can convert them? That's the first.
Right. And it's not only that, that's a big part of it, but it's also, am I willing to practice the skill to convert them? Because we can have the right heart and the right mindset, and we need the skill. And that's the second part of what we want to talk about. But I had to address the mindset first, because to put real numbers to this, I was working with a CRM behind the scenes. I got to have a really cool peek behind the scenes. I went to their headquarters and we were looking at numbers. And they said a lot of clients tell us that their web leads are terrible because they say things like, I'm not interested or whatever, the things that we hear. And once we coached them, they doubled their conversion rate from a 3% to a 6%. And the leads were exactly the same. The leads, they weren't coming from a new source. Nothing significant had changed. Simply the agents learned to ask better questions, and they went from a 3% conversion to a 6% conversion very quickly. So that's actual proof. This isn't just us like, have the right mindset, ask good questions, practice your skill. No, there's actual numbers behind this. That skill and mindset, absolutely, you're going to have better results for sure.
Yeah. It reminds me of the old, I know it is a sales trick and it's probably apocryphal as well, but the idea of tearing a page out of the phone book, right, and giving it to the new sales agent and said, these are the hottest leads we've got, right? This is an account that was abandoned by somebody who left to go join another team. We need you to pick up these leads and run with them. Yeah. If you believe that they're good, lo and behold, the phone book has a lot of people who might want it, whatever. Yeah.
Mindset is so big in this. And it is more challenging right now because of the market. I'm seeing very talented agents who are getting in their head, like, man, am I even good at this anymore? And they're saying these sentences that I don't even want to repeat. And it's like, you are still really good. In fact, your skill's probably better than it was a couple months ago. And the market is demanding that you work harder. Do not let that question yourself about your ability.
Can we pause here for just a sec? This raises an interesting question for me. How do you, when you are coaching the sales agents and teams that you work with, how do you help keep them in that positive space when it is different.
Yeah. I mean, there's not just an easy answer to that. Right. Yeah. I think acknowledging that it is challenging and is part of it. Like, don't act Pollyanna about it. Like, oh yeah, everything's fine. Part of it is acknowledging that it's harder. But what I found on the call I did Wednesday, they came into that group call very discouraged. And then we had a big discussion about, if you talk to 48 people, you will set one. That's the high end right now. And you could see their demeanor change. So part of it was just knowing actual numbers. Like, yeah, it isn't just me. The industry is saying right now, I need to talk to about 48 people to set an appointment on the high end. So I might not love that, and I can do that. And it proves to me it's not just me. And then the second thing is, what are we repeatedly telling ourselves? So something that everyone listening to this call right now could do, it does feel uncomfortable out of the gate, but write down the most negative thought that you have right now, either about yourself or about lead generation. And we're not going to leave it there. But if you write down the most negative thought that you have, it's going to reveal to you where you're stuck. And then directly under that, write the total opposite, and it might not feel true. So if I say, man, this market, I'm just not setting any appointments. Beneath that, I might say, I am setting all of the appointments I need to achieve my goals. I might not believe that today. And then scratch out the negative, like it's your bank account number, like make it impossible to even see it anymore. But what you've done is you've now created the new thing that you're going to tell yourself, and you need to do it over and over and over. A lot of people talk about affirmations and things like that. And the analogy I would use is, if we want to create a new trail in the woods, hiking, we don't actually pave it. It's a hiking trail. The way we create a trail is repetition. And just like in our brain, we have neural pathways that we can create with positive thinking. But what I used to do with affirmations is I would wake up one day and say, like, I'm going to set 2 appointments today. And then the next day I would have a totally different affirmation. And there was nothing consistent, and my mindset wasn't really changing. And when I started to understand, I actually need to cut a new neural pathway in my brain. And the way to do that is have the same thing that I say over and over and over and over and over for probably about 6 weeks. And I truly will start to believe it after about 6 weeks, versus, oh, are you still there? My computer just,
We've got it.
Okay, my computer lock screen came on in the middle. I got nervous. Okay, but it's repetition of positive statements is really, really, really important. And you have to just know, if you're working to change your mindset, it takes about 6 weeks of constant repetitious positive statements to change it, and you need to pick one. Does that make sense the way I'm explaining it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. It cut the path in the woods. Yeah. So I heard, acknowledge the reality, know your numbers, ask yourself what you're repeating, and reframe your message.
Yeah, and give yourself time to believe it, because a lot of people think, well, I don't really believe this is true. And it's like, well, yeah, if we walked in the woods one time, we would all agree we don't have a path. But if we walked in the woods every day for 6 weeks in the same exact spot, we would have a path in about 6 weeks. So you just have to give yourself time for your brain to start to believe it.
Yeah. I love that.
You both look really deep.
So good. Exactly. I'm going internal. I don't know where to. Yeah.
I'm literally like scribbling down notes, like especially the one about, like, I've never heard that analogy about a hiking path and linking that hiking path to the idea of a neuro pathway, right? Yeah. And especially, I've been on a deep Sean Acor bit right now about happiness and positivity and optimism, and it's all the same thing, right? Where it's this repetition. It takes about, in his case, he even says in some cases it's 21 days, right? And so it's that repetition over time is actually like physically changes your brain into a different thing. So,
and I like to think of it, I'm a very visual person in my head. I like to picture it like I have a shovel, and as I'm creating a new pathway, I'm taking the dirt and I'm throwing it in the old thinking. And eventually the old thinking goes away, and we just have to be patient with it. So I used to think affirmations were just, I mean, if I'm honest, when I joined Keller Williams and went to Bold and they talked about Keller Williams, I was like, this is so rah, rah, rah. And then one day I just thought, what is it going to hurt me? I mean, it's not going to hurt me to try it. You know, it's not like it's not like I'm taking some weird supplement or something. Like, what could it hurt me? And then I did it, and everything changed. And I was astounded at the power of positive thinking. Yeah.
It's funny. The next newsletter that I'm writing, I started writing on it yesterday. I meant to send it today. It doesn't always happen. But it was about that. It's about kind of going back to the Sean Acor, and it's about gratitude. So instead of affirmations, it's talking about gratitude. But the physiological change your brain has when you start to truly express gratitude for one thing a day for 21 days. Right. And that exact thing you just said about like, why not just try it? Like give in and see what happens. Who cares? It's only 21 days. That's exactly what I was writing about. So it's funny.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I don't have it in arm's reach, but one of the other courses we do a lot is win the morning, win the day, and that comes out of that happiness, the sort of the happiness advantage idea. And I picked up a copy that's not up, but they don't pay me anything. But this is my shameless plug for the 5-minute journal, just as a technique, as a tool to use, because it asks the question, what are 3 things you're grateful for today? And they make the point very clearly. Don't worry about, the only thing you can't do is repeat the same thing, the exact same thing every day, but it doesn't have to be something big. Yeah. Just the idea of expressing gratitude to, this was a great cup of coffee today. I had a great walk. I'm grateful for this neighborhood that I live in because I really like my community, whatever it is. And if you write down 1 or 2 or 3 of those things a day, it's gratitude as a pathway, and suddenly you see things to be grateful for all over, everywhere, and that does change the gears.
Sean Acor says you need to tie a little bit more why into it. Like they'll have one say, "I'm grateful for my kids," and he's like, "That's cheating." Like you gotta go a little bit deeper and say you can say you're grateful for your kids, but why? Grateful for my son because he made me breakfast or whatever. Just I look at him and I'm reminded of whatever. And it's like, okay, great. As long as you're coming up with, like you said, something new, but tying like a real thing to it, it's like, that's all it takes. And so we're on a whole different pathway. But
I know we didn't talk about any of this, and I think this is great. I'm loving
this. Is awesome. Exactly. So conversion begins with mindset. We're going deep on mindset here this morning. That's very cool. All right. The conversion is also about skill. So talk to us a little bit more about conversion. Maybe conversion skill. So let's assume we approach the question of a cold lead or colder leads in our system, in our CRM. We're ready to do it. We're excited. We know that there's business there, but we don't know what to do.
Yes. Before I answer you, my understanding is this is in a platform where they can rewatch or go back.
Correct.
Okay. So for that, I'm going to go kind of quickly so we can give as much information as we can. And for those of you watching, maybe say 27 minutes in is when I want to go back and listen to 27 minutes in, because that's when we did the opener, something like that in your notes. But the first thing I would do is, let's say I'm calling Jason. Now, maybe I called Jason a long time ago and it's been forever, or maybe I inherited him from someone who left our team and I don't have a clue what's going on with Jason. Nothing. One, I'm a little hesitant to read notes. First of all, because that can really affect my mindset. What if the last time I called Jason, there was something negative or whatever? His situation may be very, very different. And the other thing is, what I find is it slows people down reading all the old notes. And only 1 out of 4 people in general pick up the phone. That's like a pretty good day. 1 out of 4 pick up the phone. So knowing that we need about 48 contacts to set an appointment, if I'm reading all these old history notes and then dialing, think about how much time that's going to eat up when only about 25% of people pick up the phone anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to craft an opener for Jason that works no matter what his past situation was. It doesn't matter if he's a buyer or a seller, nothing. And it's going to be generic, but feel very warm. So, hey, Jason, this is Anna calling from the Eder Group, Keller Williams. Hey, I really appreciate you taking my call. I know I'm calling you out of the blue. The reason I'm calling is a while back, you expressed interest in moving. And I was curious what made you want to move back then. I want to see if I can help you. And then ideally, we'll talk about what happens if they say I'm not interested or whatever. But ideally, they then engage in conversation. And a couple key things there is, one, I thanked them for taking my call, which psychologically makes it very hard now for Jason to hang up on me. And then the second thing is, and I kind of chuckled when I did it. I do that on actual calls. What you just heard is what I would actually really, truly do. And hey, I know I'm calling you a little out of the blue. And I started doing that because I found doing this, older leads would be like, who is this? Where? And if I just said, I know I'm calling you out of the blue, they would usually kind of chuckle with me like, yeah, what is this? And then I said, hey, a while back you expressed interest in moving, and I was calling to just see what had you wanting to do that back then. I'd love to help you. And it helped eliminate a lot of confusion by me acknowledging this is out of the blue. So that's the best way to open that call. What we're not going to do is say, are you still interested? That is a closed question. And even if they are, you are a stranger, they're in the middle of doing laundry, it's inconvenient to talk to you. And even if they're just going to say no, you're making it very easy for them to say no. And then where do I go from there? That's kind of awkward. So that's how you open the call.
I want to go back. You just said something that I've never heard expressed that clearly, and it's that idea of not breathing too much energy into the old notes, right? I mean, that because I think we all get CRM obsessed, right? We're going to have this database, we're going to put all these notes, we're going to TP, blah, blah, blah. It's not to say we don't want them, but if the most important thing is the conversation to re-engage the relationship, and we know that volume matters, make the call. Pick up the phone and make the call.
Yeah.
3 out
of 4 aren't going to pick up anyway. And here's the thing. While the phone is ringing, Jason, I might read some of the notes real quick.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it, then dial, and that opener is general enough that if he answers the phone, it doesn't sound like I have no idea what's going on. Like, I'm acknowledging it's been a while. I said you expressed interest in moving. I'm not making him a buyer or a seller. Like, it's all broad enough that it works. And then if I type into the chat box, are people able to see it?
Yep, no problem. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that it just occurred to me. You said the word, you were interested in moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's buyer or seller neutral too. That's absolutely. Yeah.
And cool. What drives me nuts, and then I want to put something in the chat box to help everyone. I used to do this. So I'm not knocking people that do this. It's like I was the one who did this, but I used to say you inquired, or we're going through our database. And the image that pops in my head, it just sounds so cold and transactional. And I like to watch a lot of those crime shows. I had to stop because I started thinking everyone was going to murder me, right? So I had to quit. I used to be very into the crime shows. Yeah. And I picture when someone says we inquired, or we're cleaning up our database, or we're cleaning up our records, which just sounds very not good. But I literally picture us going down into where they store all the old evidence. And you know how they pull out the box of evidence in an old case and they dust off all the dirt and open it up and look at the old file? Yeah. I told you before, I'm very visual. That's what pops in my head. Like, it just sounds so filey,
Yeah. I'm just looking to throw you away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm calling through our records,
calling through our records, yeah.
Yes.
The cold case squad.
Yes. And my dad actually works in the evidence room. That's probably why I think about that. But anyway, it's that idea of you expressed interest in moving. That just sounds so much friendlier. You expressed interest in moving. I'm just calling to see what had you wanting to do that. I'd love to help you. And then if they say, well, we already moved. Oh, great. I'm so glad. Tell me, where did you end up? And, that kind of thing. So that's where you can go from there.
Yeah.
In the chat box, what I would recommend is, let's say I talk to Jason and I establish some motivation for him, and maybe he doesn't move today. What I'm going to do in the chat notes is to put a note that looks like this. Okay. So I like to put some stars with a capital M. Mm-hmm. So that, say a month from now, I go to call Jason and there's 30 old notes from him. My eye very quickly can see the important one because it's got some stars. It's got an M, which means motivation. And then I can know out of all the notes, that's the one to read. So just a little strategic tip for you.
I love that. And if you got questions, Jason just said, just put them in the chat, because there's absolute gold in this conversation already, and we've barely gotten to one opener. So if you've got other questions, please let us know. Okay, so we've got the opener.
Yeah.
What happens after that? Where do we pivot from there?
Yeah. So ideally they engage with you, and that's like the ideal situation is they'll answer you with, oh yeah, we were thinking about downsizing. What I often heard for these colder leads would be, well, we were thinking about downsizing, but we changed our mind. And don't focus on we changed our mind. Focus on we were thinking about downsizing. So you just ask a follow-up question. And here's what everyone to write down in your notes. Spend 3 minutes asking them about their motivation and actually time it. I have clients that have bought sand timers off Amazon that are 3 minutes long. And as soon as they get into a motivation conversation, they flip it and they won't talk about anything else until they're done. So I would, in that case, if they said, well, we were thinking about downsizing, but we changed our mind, I would say, yeah, I totally hear you changed your mind. I'm curious though, what were you thinking about with downsizing? Like sounds important. What would downsizing have done for you? And then they answer me. And,
kids are moving into high school. Kids are graduating high school, and we don't need as big a house.
Okay. And what would it do for you to not have as big of a house? Because some people would just stay put. So like, what would that have done for you to not have as big of a house?
Well, I think it's probably like weekend maintenance. I'd rather do stuff with my wife than have to mow the lawn and take care of things.
Yeah, I totally hear you. So what kinds of things did you love to do if you didn't have this big house to keep after?
Well, we're talking about buying a sailboat, and we haven't done that yet. Yeah.
No way. That's such a cool goal. Now I'm like, now I'm all curious. Like, tell me what makes you want to buy a sailboat. That sounds amazing. Where would you go? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And can you see how by him talking, Philip talking about his motivation, maybe it was halfway down, level 5 out of 10. Yeah. And as I'm asking questions and he's reminding himself of his goals and why he wanted the sailboat, now he could be inching up to like a 7 out of 10 where he was a 5. All I'm doing is asking questions. Just like if someone 3 months ago had said, why would you join the Y? I probably would have joined 3 months ago. It's the questions get them to say their own motivation, and that's going to help get them into action.
Yeah. Reinvigorate that reason what came to the website, came to the open house in the first place.
Yeah. And I find the best approach is just go with them with it. Like, yeah, I totally hear you're not doing this right now. I'm just a curious person. I mean, what were you going to do? What would have been the benefit? And that usually engages. Jason just kind of laughed. Sometimes that's what they do, right? Like, not always. Some people hang up on you or whatever. But yeah, some of them engage with you. And then you get into a conversation. And then it's easy to say, well, gosh, Philip, I heard you say you want to put that on hold, but I'm also hearing you just described this amazing lifestyle of having a sailboat that you could achieve with not having this big house. I mean, what would need to happen to get you into the sailboat? And that's a really
there's the turn.
Yeah, write that down, everybody. What would need to happen for you too?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Use it on your teenagers. Use it on your what would need to happen for us to get our room clean? What would need to happen for us to take a 3-week vacation? What would need to happen for you to get onto that sailboat and sell this big house? Like, what needs to happen for that, Philip? Sounds really important to you.
And I'm gonna pause and really nerd out on the language. I love that phrase because it's about what would need to happen is not putting the person on the spot, right? I've heard, what would you need to do?
Yeah.
Versus what would need to happen. What would you need to do? Well, I guess I'd need to be stronger, faster, better, more. Now you're making me feel bad about the choice that I either made or didn't make. Yeah. What would need to happen is external to that, what would need to happen? I guess I'd need to sell our house. I'd need to not be afraid of selling my house or whatever. It's
exactly what you had said at the beginning about coaching versus sales, right? And that's why I chuckled. Like, my favorite and most annoying coaching question I ever get, right, is what if you did have the answer, what would that look like? Right. And I say it's annoying because it sounds like a stupid question and it works like 99% of the time. It helps people break through a barrier, but it sounds too simple. So it's kind of the same thing though. These questions you're asking, they're coaching questions, right? These are all things coaches learn of the different techniques or whatever you go, coaching skills camp. This is what you learn, and that's all you're doing. You're coaching them into it.
Yeah, you nailed it. And Phil, back to what you said, I never actually thought about that. It's not focused on them as a person and what they need to do. It's more external. And yeah, you're totally right. And the other thing is it's solution oriented. It's not because I do this sometimes if I'm distracted, I'll catch myself and I go towards, well, what made you decide to put that on hold? And now they're just going to reiterate out loud all the reasons they've told themselves why they shouldn't, which will reinforce it. It's really not the best question. Whereas if we say, well, what would need to happen for you to get into that sailboat and offload this big house so you can go enjoy your lifestyle? Now we're totally solution focused. Now we're completely in the lane of figuring out how to make it work. And that's where they start saying things like, well, I'd have to figure out where to go. I'd have to figure out what my house is worth. I'd have to investigate what a sailboat costs. But they're basically feeding to us and to themselves the solution, which is what we want so that we can help this person move forward. And yeah, we're probably going to get a sale out of this, but I'm also really helping someone because I coached them and that feels really good.
Yeah, moving through. Yeah, you're moving. It's progressive in the sense that you're helping them make progress. without making them be the person, the reason they're not making progress, without putting them on the spot. You're just saying what would need to happen, what is the path forward. You may be the problem because you haven't made the decision, but we're not making them feel bad about the fact that.
Well, what I'll tell you too, from doing this for years and years and years, I counted it up maybe 2 years ago, and I had 27,000 hours of lead generation under my belt. So I've heard it all. And sometimes they will laugh at themselves. Not always, but sometimes it's I guess I just need to do it. It's almost like through asking the good questions, they self-realize I'm the one. It's like that Taylor Swift song. It's me. Hi. Problem. Right. Like, it's me. I need to move. And I can't believe I just sang on a webinar. I've never done that before. So, let's get that out. That's how you do it.
Yeah. I love that. Creating the pathway forward. Very cool. All right. So now we've got the opener. We've moved them. We've moved them to a place that we've got them thinking.
Yeah.
What should we expect would happen? Let's imagine this is the first re-engagement call. We've gotten them off, unstuck. Now what do we do?
Yeah. So if they concluded that, actually I do want to do this, I would then, remember, we're going to spend 3 minutes into motivation.
Yep.
Then we're going to transition into pre-qualifying them. So pretty much everything we've talked about on this call so far was opening it and then all about their personal motivation. And I have a transition statement I really like, and it's, well, great. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. Philip, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
And now I'm going to do a buyer or seller, or maybe both, pre-qualification sheet. And essentially, as I work my way through the buyer or seller pre-qualification sheet, and all I mean by that is it's a list of questions every buyer gets or every seller gets. And if they're both, they get both of them. And then as I ask those questions, and on there, it's things like, what's your ideal time frame not to move? Philip, what's your ideal time frame to be on the sailboat? Like, when would you want to be on the sailboat? Because nobody
wants to move. So I say maybe February 2025.
Okay, amazing. So if it's that far out, then I would probably say, amazing. That's so great. That's really not that far away. Now, I do have a question. It sounded really important to you. I'm hearing the lifestyle you want. You've already been thinking about this a few years. What's the benefit in your mind of waiting until February 2025 to make that happen versus just doing it sooner?
Yeah, well, we don't have the boat yet, so we'd have to buy the boat, and then I'm assuming it'll take us a little while to get the house sold and on the market, and money in our pocket, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's really the logistics of buying the boat, selling the house. Is there anything else that makes you feel that you would need to prolong?
Well, I mean, I need to make sure that my wife and I are still on the same page, but no, it's really just logistics. It's just the getting it done. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you feel is the next step for you in making that happen? Like, I'm hearing you say you need to buy a boat. I don't know where you are in that process, if you even investigate how much it costs, all that stuff. So like, where are you in that process?
Very early stages. I'm going to kind of I know what I would like to buy. I don't know if we sold our house, if we could afford to buy a new one and the boat. So I guess I don't know what the house is worth.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there might be two next steps here. And let me pause real quick.
Yep.
You get motivation, spend 3 minutes, then you pre-qualify them. And as you pre-qualify them, that's step number 2. You're going to discover along the way what their steps should be. Now, if you're like ready to go and you're like, yeah, I mean, I guess I could do it now, I would set an appointment with you. That would be your next step. In this case, it sounds like there's got to be some investigating about what kind of boat. Is the wife on the same page? What about what your house is worth? My gut, what I would actually do in your life, I'm not hearing you say that you're waiting because of a job. Really, it just sounds like logistical information. What does a boat cost? What does my house sell for? I would probably just set an appointment for you now and give you an action item of, hey, Philip, what would be the next step to figure out the cost of a boat? I'm going to put my high school teacher hat on. I'm going to pretend I'm giving you homework. Yep. Philip, what would be your next step to figure out the boat part? And then I can help you with the house value part by meeting with you. So
now you're really going into that coaching mode. You're going to coach them to take some action, move some.
Oh yeah. Every call you want to hang up with an agreed upon action, even if it's just, we're going to stay in touch. In this case, I would say, meet with me. Now, normally I would not meet with someone who's going to be February 2020, but I'm just hearing logistical stuff from you. What if we meet, you find out what your house is worth, And I know because of what the market's been, you're probably going to be surprised because the houses have gone up so much the last few years. What I'm hearing without saying it to the client is this could be someone that if he figured out his house is worth way more than he thought, maybe he'd buy the boat sooner. And so let's just go ahead and meet with him. And he might be a ways out, but that's why it's called sales. It is an element of risk every time you meet with someone. So I would say our 2 next steps, Philip. 1, let's meet and just figure out what this house is worth. That's step number 1. It's just information. I do want to make sure that your wife can be in that meeting as well. And then we would set that up. I won't go through how to set the appointment. That's not really what today's about. But I would pick a time. Can your wife be there? Blah, blah, blah. And then I would say, Philip, the second item, what would you need to do to figure out what a boat would cost or whatever the next step is there? I'd love to help you move forward with that. So what would you say is your next step on the boat side of things? Yeah.
Probably need to go back, talk to the boat broker that I had spoken with before.
Okay. Cool. Is there any chance you could do that before we meet, just so we have some information to go off of? It doesn't mean you're buying the boat today or anything.
Yeah, no, I could give him a call. Absolutely. No, I mean, he's always happy to take a call from a potential client. So
I'm sure. Okay, cool. And then I would pick a time, and we're hanging up agreeing he's going to talk to the boat guy so that when he comes to our meeting, he has a number in his mind for the boat, which is going to help me figure out. Now this is all just strategy, right? Like, what's the house worth? How much do you need to buy the boat? What's your equity? Blah, blah, blah. And maybe he would do this a whole lot sooner than February 2020 once we meet. But that line, hey, it doesn't mean you're buying a house tomorrow or something. This is just information, that works really well for some of these colder leads. Now, if this was someone that I felt was real flaky or something, I probably wouldn't do that. But in this case, I just know emotionally, I caught him off guard. He started off, I'm not interested. I've got him interested. I don't want him to hang up and freak out like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting a realtor in 2 days and I wasn't even thinking about this an hour ago. So that's why I say the line like, hey, it doesn't mean you're buying a house tomorrow.
Buying a house.
It's just information, but I really am hearing how much you want to be on that boat. I want to help make it happen for you.
Yeah. I was just writing that down. It's just information, but you're moving them forward. Conversion is converting them. They're from one position to another, from one state to another. They have a house. We're converting them to a position where they have no house because they're selling it. Yeah.
And back to the football analogy, something else that can help mindset. And I've shared this before. So some people watching might have heard this, but in football, if someone gains 10 yards, we're not on the sidelines like, oh, terrible guy, Everybody's cheering because we just gained 10 yards. And you could argue the point like, well, no points were made, so why are we all excited? I mean, we only gained 10 yards. It's like, well, yeah, we're 10 yards closer than we were. Hello. Do you not understand the game of football? You should be cheering with us. And what I find in real estate, I find a lot of agents downplay the importance of the 10-yard plays. And they're thinking, I'm really not trying to assume here. I just know how I was. It's appointment or nothing. It's like I either set an appointment or waste of time. It's like, no. A football game, you need like 7 plays to get it into the end zone. I'm going to hang up with Philip and I'm going to gain 10 yards. If he agrees to talk to the boat guy and meet with me on Friday, I just gained 10 yards. That is amazing. Which, by the way, will help the mindset, going back to mindset. What if at the end of every day I say I set one appointment and I had 4 people move towards the end zone today? Yeah. That feels so much better.
Absolutely. If you're on the call or you're watching the recording, write that down. We downplay the value of the 10-yard play. That's so true. So true.
Yeah. If you can picture looking down on a football field like you're in a helicopter, we want all the new leads are at the 50-yard line and all the people who are like closed or down in the end zone. And we need players all throughout the field between here and there. That's how you have a sustainable business. If I'm only focused on new leads, I'm going to have a whole bunch of people stacked at the 50-yard line. If I'm only focused on the hot ones, I'm going to end up with a whole bunch of people in the end zone and no one in between. And the best, most successful business has some new people. They have some people in the end zone and they have a whole smattering of people in between those 2 points. And you're constantly moving them forward, making a play. Yeah.
I love that. Jason, you had some very specific kind of questions, or this conversation today was kind of coming out of some discussions you and I had. What have we not talked about that we should have?
I mean, that big piece that I was looking for was that what do we do with those medium leads? The ones that I generated, like Facebook leads that I've had in there for even just like 3 months, but we never called them. Right. And actually, so Anna just dropped that link in there about mega lead conversion. I definitely wanted to talk about that because I think I'm signing up for the next one. So,
that would be so fun to have you in there.
So I need to know about it, please.
Exactly.
I was gonna do the last one, and then it just, time slipped away. And I actually have a friend in the current one, and she was like, "You need to."
Who is it? If you will.
Renee Mello.
Oh, awesome. We have the people in the class right now are awesome. They're so engaged. It's like one of the most fun classes I've ever taught. They're super fun.
Well, and like it's almost like my summary of what I think it is anyways, and you can correct it, is so Anna always had a class that was all about ISAs, right? So it's like ISA mastery or whatever it was called before. But what's an ISA's job? Lead conversion. That's all it is. Well, what's an agent's job? Lead conversion. It's the same skill. It's just that the ISA doesn't have to go do the negotiations, the showings, the other 5 tasks or the other of the 4 tasks that Gary talks about agents do. And so as we're building a team, it's like, okay, I know that this is the one skill that if I can nail this, I already have the generation side down. Now let's nail the conversion. So even that one script alone, but I want to know more about the class too.
Yeah. So tell us about mega lead conversion.
Yeah, great question. So also when you nail lead conversion, not if, because you will. But so the class is full of language patterns that are relational based. So I gave you a call opener and I didn't break down the nitty gritty of it step by step because I know we had a lot to cover in this call. But for example, in class, we spend 30 minutes just on a quality call opener that you can use for any lead source, expired, for sale by owner, sphere, things like that. We go over things like, what do you do if they say, oh, I'm busy, can you call me later? How do you keep them on the phone, not obnoxiously? Like, how do you actually keep them on the phone in a relational way that makes them want to talk to you? Just 2 weeks ago in class, a student said, I have to tell you something. And she set an appointment off someone who said, I'm busy, can you call me later? And she kept him on the phone and set an actual qualified appointment. So things like that. We talk through how to set an appointment that shows up, dealing with objections. So in all, there's 19 language patterns, all centered around hello, all the way through a signed agreement. So they've hired you. That's the whole goal. And then we also give tracking systems. So we were talking today about knowing your numbers. We teach you how to look at your numbers. And a lot of people, and this feels really good to me as a coach, a lot of people say, I've always heard to track your numbers, but I never knew how to interpret them. And I've never felt so empowered. So we even go through like, Jason, how much money do you want to make next year and why? Don't just pick a number. Like go through your bills. What vacations do you want to go on? What debt are we paying off? And most people come up with some weird number because it's not random. It's like tied to some stuff. And then we go through like figuring out the economic model. How many contacts a day will get you that amount of money? And it's just, you can probably tell my energy is high. And it's not just because I teach the class. Like I saw this content change my life. 10 years ago, I had never even been on a vacation. I had never had money. And now I'm going off to Africa for 3 weeks. Like all of that came from understanding language patterns. Like money is no longer a concern for me. It all came from the skill in this class. So if you see passion coming from me, that's why. Like I have seen not knowing these patterns, learning them, and then life changing financially. And you get to help people. Now you're better helping your clients. It just feels really good. So I might have just told you more than you asked for, but I get really passionate.
No, it's good. Well, and so many agents, like the reason everyone's paying referral sources right now, instead of like when they're all paying Redfin 40%, Zillow 35%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's because they're doing the conversion, right? They're converting them to the appointment or somebody that's right at that end zone, ready for the appointment. So you're paying 35% in order to cover that, 80 yards that you didn't move the ball down, to use your analogy. And so it's like, if we can, when we learn this ourselves, you save a third back, kind of coming from the team leader role before, people kick back all the time on like, oh, I can't believe, why would anyone pay an 80-20 split to their broker? It's like, well, but you're also you're willingly paying 35% for a connection. Right. And so it's like, that's why we want to master it, is because I don't want to pay another 35% referral fee if I'd never have to again.
Yeah.
So registration link is in the chat, right?
Yeah. megaleadconversion.com. That link will take you to the landing page where you can read more about it. And I have a little video that explains. And then when you click on sign up, before you actually sign up, you'll see the full schedule. You'll see dates. You'll see all that stuff. It's basically 18 sessions, and we do it over 6 months. And I put in the chat box, enter the code WEB15, and you'll get 15% off each month. So that'll say, when you said percentage, Jason, it made me think of that. So I'm glad you said the word percentage. And you do not have to be Keller Williams to take it. So if it asks for a Keller Williams ID number, just put 0 and you can get in there. But I will tell you, I want to brag on one of the students. He had he's an inside sales agent, which if you're not familiar, I know you guys are, but for the audience, their one thing is setting appointments, and pretty typical expectation is 20 a month. And when he came, his leader called me and said, can you coach him? He's only setting 2 a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if this is reasonable.
Yeah, you have the wrong person. Like the easy one.
I'll try. Right. I'll try. We'll see. And I want you to know, within 2 months, he was setting 8 a week. So he went from 2 a month to 32 a month. And if you need proof in numbers, like, there it is. The thing is, you just have to show up, and it's even recorded, so you don't even have to show up live, although I would love to see you all. If you watch and you actually practice, there's no way you're not going to have closings. And that's the thing everybody's struggling with right now is I can't find appointments, and I don't want to talk to 48 people. Okay, well, that's where your skill comes in. You can control your numbers and you can control your skill. So those are the 2 things.
Yeah, I love that.
The number you used before about that, the 30 to 48 on the high end, is that also assuming, like, basically across all lead sources? That's just a generic.
Yeah, and I just surveyed. I have a group of about 6,000 people, and I just sent out a survey to everyone to fill out anonymously. And I just said, how many contacts is it taking you to set an appointment right now? And that was the question. And it was low end 30, high end 48. But knowing the audience, I know some of them are calling circle calls. Some of them are calling FISBOs. Some are calling, like, so that would be, I would say, probably across 5 lead sources on average, getting you about that. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm gonna be excited to watch this again, because I know there are good things that I missed. There's every minute. I think I'm writing down notes. It's like every minute. I need to go back and listen to that. But in the time that we have left, what did we not talk about? Anything that you want to share on lead conversion that would help our folks that we didn't cover?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing, and I see Stephanie's question, I'll answer you in just a second. I would say the biggest thing is sometimes people hear a training like this, and I've done it myself, where you hear someone and you can tell they know what they're doing, and then we can compare. And the thing I want you to know is it's just time on task and doing it. I am not a natural salesperson. I had an education background. And remember, I said I would never do business or sales. And really, it's simply deciding, what am I willing to do to learn the craft? And ask yourself that, like, what am I willing to do to get this in my brain? For me, I recorded a lot of these on my phone, and I would listen to the patterns to and from work every day, which was 40 minutes every day, 20 there, 20 back. It was annoying. I wanted to listen to music in my car. I'm a musician. And I just thought, for 6 months, I'm going to put myself all in learning some language patterns, because I want to make money. I need to make money. And I really believe that made the difference. So that's what I would say is, you can hear all of this, and this is great. It's what you do after this that's really going to make a difference. Are you going to work on your mindset? Are you going to work on your skill? That's going to be what matters. Stephanie's question, and we're at time, I want to respect that.
Sure.
When I say appointment, I mean they're meeting with us to have a discussion about hiring us. That's what I mean. So we've set up a time to interview each other. And if we mutually agree, they're going to hire me by signing a buyer's consultation or a listing or a buyer's rep agreement or a listing agreement.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Jason, Good. Anything else? What did we forget?
I don't know. There's too much. Like you said, I have a gap in my notes because I was making some time markers. I have this gap where it's just paying attention and stuff.
Just listening.
So we're gonna have to go back to. There's some good nuggets. I really, like I said, the one about the hiking. I like analogies, and that's a really good.
Where that came from is I like to off-road. I drive a big 4-wheel drive truck, and I was off-roading on a trail I hadn't been in for a while. And I used to sometimes go left, and the trail was gone. And I had this moment of like, where am I? Like, am I in the right spot? Like, I've done this probably 20 times, and I don't know if I'm where I thought I was. And I really looked at it, and I'm like, no, there's so much overgrowth. And now this road to the right is like very defined. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, that's how our brain works. And no wonder when I've done random affirmations, no wonder I didn't think they worked. It was like running around the woods aimlessly. So that's where that came from, was my off-road. I thought I was lost.
I mean, it's a good one. It's a good one.
That works.
Hey, I appreciate you guys having me today.
Thank you.
I know you can ask anyone you want, and I'm really thankful you guys asked me. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Thank you. It's this is solid gold. I hope you got good, to the folks in the audience. I hope you got good notes out of it. The recording will be up shortly. megaleadconversion.com. Make sure you get the website.
Yep,
right.
August 2nd, by the way, is when that starts, which sounds far away because it says August. Can you believe that's only about 10 days?
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks away. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. That's it. All right. Anna, thank you. Jason, thank you. Next First Friday call in August. We've got database bootcamp launching. We got AI bootcamp launching, and we've got on-demand Facebook bootcamp going live in August as well. So look out for those things on the PBK platforms.
Busy times.
And thanks to everybody who joined us on the webinar today. And if you're watching the recording, hope you got something out of it. We'll talk soon. See ya.
Bye, guys.